I've always been a risk taker. But even then, I never expected that my leap into entrepreneurship would lead me through such a wild and humbling journey. This is the story of how I went from being a broke 25-year-old with nothing but a few ideas and a lot of ambition to running a business that now earns over $3 million in annual revenue. It all started when I graduated college in 2015. Like most students, I had this idealized vision of what post-college life would look like. I thought I'd land a high-paying job, live in a big city, and climb the corporate ladder. Instead, I found myself working a dead-end job at a call center. It wasn't that the work was inherently bad, honestly, it was a good gig for someone just starting out. But I knew deep down that it wasn't what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. During that time, I started toying with the idea of starting my own business. It wasn't a sudden epiphany, more like a gradual realization. I've been spending my spare time reading books and watching videos about entrepreneurship. I learned about the hustle, the late nights, the failures, the relentless drive. Something about it clicked with me. The idea of building something from scratch, the thought of being my own boss, was intoxicating. But I didn't have any money. I wasn't even in a place where I could afford to quit my job and start fresh. So, I did the only thing that made sense at the time. I started small. My first business idea was completely random. I had a deep interest in fitness, and like many people, I spent a lot of time looking for ways to get better results from my workouts. After some research, I stumbled across a niche, custom workout gear. It wasn't something I had ever considered as a business idea, but it felt right. The market was growing, people were willing to pay for personalized products, and I saw an opportunity to tap into the fitness community by offering something that catered to their specific needs. I spent every waking hour after work researching suppliers, manufacturers, and the logistics behind running an online store. I didn't know much about e-commerce, but I learned quickly. I bought a few basic tools, a simple website template, and spent nights on end building my store. My friends and family thought I was crazy. They didn't get why I was pouring all my time and energy into something that might not even take off. But for me, it wasn't about whether it would succeed or fail. It was about proving to myself that I could do it. The first few months were brutal. I didn't have the cash to spend on advertising, so I had to rely on organic methods to drive traffic to my store. I started creating content, blog posts about fitness, workout tips, and how to use the gear I was selling. I created Instagram pages, started posting daily, and reached out to influencers who might be willing to promote my products in exchange for free gear. The orders trickled in. At first, it felt like I was spinning my wheels, but I kept at it, slowly growing my audience and figuring out how to convert them into paying customers. In the beginning, I would have been thrilled with a $100 sale, but as time went on, my confidence grew. I was still working full-time at the call center, but my business was growing slowly but surely. I started saving up enough to hire a part-time assistant to help with customer service and fulfillment. At night, after work, I'd pack orders, respond to emails, and try to scale things up. In 2017, after about a year and a half of working both jobs, I decided it was time to take a risk. My business was making enough money that I could afford to quit my day job and go full-time. This was the moment I had been waiting for. It felt like jumping off a cliff, but I had enough faith in my product and myself to make it work. The first few months as a full-time entrepreneur were filled with growing pains. I wasn't making enough money to live comfortably, and there were days when I wondered if I had made a huge mistake. I had a few sleepless nights, questioning everything. But I kept reminding myself why I was doing this. I had taken the leap for a reason. There was no turning back now. What really turned the business around was focusing on scaling my marketing. I doubled down on Facebook and Instagram ads, and that's when things really started to take off. My revenue tripled in the first year alone. The sales started coming in fast, and I had to figure out how to manage it all. My team grew. I started outsourcing production, and I eventually had to hire a logistics manager to handle the growing inventory and order fulfillment. By 2019, the business had reached the six-figure mark. I couldn't believe it. I was living my dream. But there was a catch. The more successful the business became, the more stressful it got. I was managing a team, handling customer complaints, overseeing production, and trying to keep up with marketing. It felt like there was always something urgent that needed my attention. There were days I felt completely overwhelmed. That's when I realized something crucial. I couldn't do it all. I hired a business coach, someone who had been where I was and had successfully scaled a company. He taught me how to delegate, how to focus on high-level strategy, and how to systematize everything. Slowly but surely, the pressure started to ease. I started spending more time working on the business instead of constantly working in it. My days became more structured, and I was able to focus on what really mattered: growth. By 2020, my company was making over $1 million in revenue annually. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. That year, the pandemic hit, and like everyone else, I had to adapt. My business was in a great position to thrive online, but the supply chain disruptions and shifts in consumer behavior made things more complicated. I had to get creative, pivot my product offerings, and find new ways to stay relevant in a world that was suddenly very different. Looking back, it wasn't the financial success that meant the most to me, it was the journey. The countless late nights, the failures, the moments when I wanted to quit. But I didn't quit. I learned, I adapted, and I kept going. And in the end, it paid off. Now, in 2025, my business has grown to over $3 million in annual revenue. I have a team of 15, a growing product line, and a customer base that loves what we offer. I've been able to reinvest the profits into new projects and even started investing in other startups. I no longer work 80-hour weeks, and I've learned to trust my team to handle the day-to-day operations. But the journey is far from over. There's still so much I want to achieve, and I'm constantly looking for new ways to challenge myself and my business. The one thing I know for sure is that there's no easy path to success. It's not about overnight wins or luck. It's about persistence, resilience, and being willing to take risks when it matters most. I hope my story shows you that success doesn't happen by accident. It takes grit. It takes vision. And most importantly, it takes the willingness to keep going even when things look tough. If you've got an idea or a dream, don't wait for the perfect time. It might never come. Take the leap, and you'll figure it out along the way. If I can do it, so can you. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. I've always been the kind of person who thrives on challenges, but I never expected my entrepreneurial journey to take the path it did. In fact, it all started in the most unlikely place: a small, worn-out coffee shop in a quiet suburban neighborhood. I had been working a corporate job for a few years, and like many people, I was getting that nagging feeling that I was meant to do something more. I had always loved tech and gadgets, but I wasn't sure how to turn that into a business. Every day after work, I would go to the same coffee shop to unwind, sip my overpriced latte, and dream about what it would be like to own my own business. I spent hours scrolling through social media, looking at successful entrepreneurs sharing their stories, wondering if I could ever make it. One night, as I was sitting at my usual corner table, I overheard a conversation between two older men sitting next to me. They were talking about how they had been successful in real estate for years, but now they were looking to diversify their portfolio. They mentioned how the tech space was booming and how they had been considering investing in some startup ideas, but were hesitant because of the high risk. The conversation caught my attention because, in that moment, I realized something. These guys didn't have any magical secret sauce. They were just taking risks and looking for opportunities. This conversation gave me the courage to take action. I decided to quit my corporate job and try to build something of my own. Of course, it wasn't as easy as just quitting and hoping for the best. I had no experience running a business, no investors, and no solid plan. But I did have something invaluable: determination. For the next few months, I poured myself into learning everything I could about business. I read books, listened to podcasts, attended local startup meetups, and watched countless YouTube videos. I decided that I wanted to create something that could improve people's lives, something that wasn't just another product, but something that could solve a real problem. After much brainstorming, I landed on an idea. There was a growing trend of people wanting to become more self-sufficient and reduce their reliance on big corporations, especially when it came to food. People were starting to take more interest in urban farming, but there was one major issue. It was hard to get started, especially for people who lived in apartments or didn't have access to outdoor space. That's when I came up with the idea for a compact, self-sustaining indoor garden system. It would allow anyone, even in the smallest of apartments, to grow fresh vegetables and herbs right from their kitchen or living room. It wasn't just about gardening. It was about creating a lifestyle that encouraged sustainability and self-reliance. I didn't have the money to build a prototype, so I started small. I used my savings to buy a 3D printer and started experimenting with different designs for the system. I spent sleepless nights working on prototypes in my small apartment, learning as I went. The first few versions were terrible, too bulky, impractical, and downright ugly. But each failure taught me something new, and slowly but surely, I began to see progress. Once I had a working prototype, I knew I had to test it. I reached out to a few friends and family members, offering them the system for free in exchange for feedback. The response was overwhelmingly positive. People loved the idea of having fresh produce at their fingertips, and they were impressed by how easy it was to set up and use. However, they also had concerns about the price point and the space it took up. This feedback was crucial, and it helped me refine the design. I made it more compact, more affordable, and more user-friendly. The next step was the hardest. How was I going to sell this thing? I didn't have the funds to launch a full-blown advertising campaign, and I had no connections in the industry. But I knew that if I wanted to make this work, I had to find a way to get noticed. I decided to turn to crowdfunding. I launched a campaign on Kickstarter, hoping to raise enough money to build the first batch of products. I spent days crafting the perfect pitch, describing the vision behind the product, the benefits of having an indoor garden, and how it could change the way people interacted with food. I poured my heart and soul into that campaign. But when it went live, the results weren't what I expected. At first, the campaign was a flop. I had no backers. My friends and family shared the campaign, but it wasn't getting the traction I needed. I felt defeated. Was this a sign that my idea wasn't good enough? Was it all just a waste of time? But I wasn't ready to give up. I decided to spend the next few weeks reaching out to influencers in the sustainability and tech spaces. I sent out free units in exchange for reviews and shared the campaign with everyone I knew. Slowly but surely, people started to notice. A few articles were written about the product, and some influencers started sharing their experiences. The campaign started to pick up steam. By the time the campaign ended, I had raised 3 times the amount I initially asked for. The success of the campaign was a game changer. It gave me the funding I needed to order the materials and start production. It also gave me a sense of validation. There were people out there who believed in my idea. The next challenge was scaling the business. I had to figure out how to turn this small, one-man operation into something bigger. I hired a few contractors to help with design and production, but I was still deeply involved in every aspect of the business. From managing inventory to handling customer service, I wore every hat. There were times when I was so overwhelmed that I thought about quitting, but I kept reminding myself why I started this journey in the first place. As sales began to grow, I started reinvesting the profits into marketing, expanding my product line, and improving the technology. Eventually, I was able to hire a full-time team and move into a larger office space. The growth was exponential, and within 3 years, the company was turning a profit. Now, looking back at that quiet coffee shop where it all started, it's hard to believe how far I've come. The product that once started as a small idea in my apartment is now being sold in retail stores nationwide. I've learned so much along the way, and while the journey was full of ups and downs, I wouldn't trade it for anything. I'm not a millionaire, but I've built a business that I'm proud of. It wasn't easy, and there were moments when I wanted to quit, but persistence, adaptability, and a willingness to take risks got me through. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: you don't need to have it all figured out from the start. You just need to take the first step and keep going, no matter how many times you fail. It was the summer of 2018 when I first decided to take the leap into entrepreneurship. I was 26 years old, fresh out of college, and working a 9-to-5 job at a tech startup. The company was growing rapidly, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was wasting my time. I had always wanted to build something of my own, but like most people, I was scared. I had no clear idea of what my path would look like or if I was even cut out for it. But one thing was clear: I had to try. The idea hit me one evening while scrolling through Instagram. I came across an ad for a subscription box service. I had seen them before, but this time, something clicked. What if I could create my own subscription box, something tailored to a niche that wasn't fully explored yet? After thinking about it for a few days, I landed on the idea: a subscription box for eco-conscious products. There were plenty of boxes for beauty, fitness, and food, but I hadn't seen anything that focused on sustainability. I couldn't stop thinking about it, but I also didn't know the first thing about creating a business. So I started doing research. I devoured articles, read books, and watched YouTube videos about starting a business, launching a product, and, of course, the subscription box model. I learned about packaging, shipping, logistics, and the importance of branding. I quickly realized that there was so much I didn't know, but also that I could figure it out as I went. The first thing I did was set up a website. I used a platform like Shopify because it was affordable and user-friendly. I spent hours designing it, learning how to optimize it for SEO, and making sure it looked professional. The biggest challenge, though, was finding suppliers for eco-friendly products. I needed to ensure the products were both sustainable and high quality, which was more difficult than I initially anticipated. I had to contact dozens of manufacturers, most of whom either ignored me or told me that their products weren't up to my standards. Eventually, I found a handful of suppliers who shared my values and were willing to work with me. I started placing small orders to test the quality and the demand for these products. The next hurdle was pricing. I wanted to keep the subscription affordable, but I didn't want to compromise on quality. After crunching the numbers, I figured out a pricing structure that would allow me to break even in the first few months while still covering costs. In parallel, I worked on building a social media presence. I created an Instagram account and started posting content about sustainable living, eco-friendly tips, and sneak peeks of the products I was planning to offer. I spent hours every week creating posts, engaging with followers, and building a community. Slowly, but surely, I started gaining traction. People seemed genuinely interested in the idea, and I began receiving messages from potential customers asking when they could subscribe. By the end of that summer, I had enough pre-orders to make the first batch of boxes. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I spent weeks packaging and shipping each box by hand. I remember spending long nights in my apartment, sealing the boxes, adding personal notes to each one, and feeling a mixture of excitement and anxiety. Would they like the products? Would they think it was worth the money? The first month was nerve-wracking. I was running on little sleep, trying to juggle the day job, building the business, and responding to customers. But then something unexpected happened. Sales started picking up. Word of mouth, social media shares, and positive reviews began to snowball. I knew I couldn't keep up with the pace on my own, so I hired a part-time assistant to help with packaging and customer service. The next challenge came when I had to scale. The number of subscriptions kept increasing, and I realized I needed a more efficient way to manage inventory, handle fulfillment, and streamline the entire process. I couldn't afford to hire a full-time team just yet, so I turned to automation software to handle the logistics. This helped free up a lot of my time, but the growing demand meant I had to keep reinvesting every penny into the business to keep up with orders. I remember feeling like I was constantly on the edge, always running behind, but also constantly pushing forward. One thing I did early on was establish a feedback loop with my customers. I sent out surveys after every delivery, asking for input on the products, the packaging, and the overall experience. Some feedback was difficult to hear, but it allowed me to make improvements that would later set me apart from competitors. I also started collaborating with eco-friendly influencers who helped promote my subscription box to a wider audience. Their endorsement led to a significant uptick in subscribers, and I began building relationships with people in the eco-conscious community who shared the same values. By 2020, my subscription box had grown enough that I was able to quit my day job and focus on the business full-time. I felt a sense of relief and accomplishment, but also a heavy sense of responsibility. The stakes were higher now. This was my livelihood. Every decision I made could have a direct impact on the future of the business. During this time, I ran into one of my biggest challenges: supply chain issues. The pandemic had caused disruptions in global shipping, and many of my suppliers faced delays. Some products I depended on became unavailable, and I had to scramble to find replacements. It was stressful, but it also taught me the importance of building a resilient business model that could weather unforeseen challenges. In the following year, I reached a major milestone. My subscription box was featured in a major eco-lifestyle magazine. That exposure was a game-changer. I received a flood of new orders and, more importantly, a wave of media attention. With that, I reinvested in marketing and hired a small team to help with content creation and operations. It wasn't long before I realized that I had created something more than just a business. It was a movement, a community of people who genuinely cared about sustainability and wanted to make a difference. Fast forward to today, and my business has grown beyond what I ever imagined. We've expanded into other products, and our subscription model has evolved to offer more flexibility. We've partnered with organizations that support environmental causes, and we're working on building a carbon-neutral supply chain. We've also launched a program that helps customers offset their carbon footprints through donations to tree planting initiatives. Looking back, I'm proud of how far we've come. But the journey wasn't easy. There were countless late nights, difficult decisions, and moments where I felt like giving up. But each step, each challenge, brought me closer to where I am today. If I could go back and talk to the younger version of myself, I would tell him this. You don't need to have everything figured out from the start. You don't need to know exactly how it's going to go. You just need to start. And don't stop. 3 years ago, I left a six-figure job at a Fortune 500 company to sell socks online. I don't mean designer socks. I mean novelty socks with dumb puns on them. My dad thought I was having a breakdown. My girlfriend, now wife, was cautiously supportive, and my friends treated it like I was announcing I joined a cult. But now, that dumb sock business does over $1.2 million a year in revenue, and I'm finally sleeping more than 4 hours a night. The story starts in one of those gray-walled open offices. I was a product manager at a major software company. I was well paid and dead inside. You know the type of job where you schedule a Zoom meeting to schedule another Zoom meeting? That. I kept a little notebook where I wrote startup ideas during meetings because it helped me not scream. Most of the ideas were bad. One wasn't. It started when I saw a friend post a pair of taco-themed socks on Instagram. People were loving it. I clicked through the comments and saw multiple people asking where to buy them. That's when I started researching. Turns out, novelty socks are a $3+ billion industry globally. People buy them for themselves, gifts, corporate swag, you name it. And what's more, very few of the companies were doing anything remotely interesting with their branding. So I dug deeper. I cold emailed 12 different sock manufacturers, only 4 replied. I ended up Skyping at 2 a.m. with a small factory in North Carolina that specialized in cotton blend socks. They agreed to produce a sample run if I could front $1,200. That night, I ordered a batch of 300 socks with a design I scribbled myself, slices of pizza doing yoga poses. I called them Namaste Cheesy. I launched the site using Shopify, and my marketing plan was, post a lot on Reddit and try not to sound desperate. I wrote posts like, I quit my job to sell dumb socks, roast me, and would you buy these socks or are they trash? Reddit actually came through. People roasted me, sure, but they also bought socks. I sold out the entire batch in 11 days. The next few months were chaos. I was packing orders in my tiny apartment, handwriting thank you notes, and answering customer emails at 3 a.m. I expanded the designs, T-Rexes eating burritos, sloths on skateboards, a pair that just had the word MEH repeated 400 times. People were weirdly into it. One weekend, I posted a mock-up of a sock that said, "Don't talk to me until I've had my socks," with a little angry coffee mug on it. It blew up on Twitter after a few influencers reposted it. I hadn't even made that design yet, just the mock-up. So I scrambled to get a new batch produced. That sock ended up becoming our best seller for 2 straight quarters. Here's the first real turning point. I got an email from a buyer at Urban Outfitters. He had seen our socks on Instagram and wanted to test them in 20 stores. I thought it was a prank. I even called the number in the email and awkwardly asked, "Are you really you?" He was. We did the test. They sold out in 2 weeks. They put us in 75 stores nationwide. It should have felt like I made it. But here's the thing no one tells you, growth is terrifying. I had no systems, no team, no inventory management beyond a Google sheet and my cat sitting on shipping labels. I made so many mistakes that quarter I almost imploded. Once, I miscalculated a restock and ended up $18,000 short of fulfilling orders. I had to refund over 600 customers and sent out $5 gift cards to all of them with an apology email I spent 3 hours writing. It hurt, but it also built loyalty. About 40% of those customers came back within the year. Eventually, I hired my first employee, a high school friend who had just finished a marketing boot camp. She handled social media, influencer outreach, and DMs, and frankly, she was better at it than I ever was. We started using a third-party logistics company to handle fulfillment. We built out email flows and retargeting campaigns. I learned the language of CAC and LTV. I started reading balance sheets without panicking. By year 2, we were profitable. We reinvested most of it into inventory and design. I brought on freelance illustrators to create monthly collections based on themes like unicorn apocalypse and sad fruits. I still don't know why sad fruits worked, but it did. Then came the acquisition offer. A lifestyle brand with multiple DTC labels emailed me. They wanted to buy 51% of the company for $600,000 with an earn-out tied to scaling to $3 million revenue. I'd keep creative control and stay on as CEO. I said no, not because I didn't want the money, but because it felt like letting go of a part of myself too early. Instead, I took a smaller investment from a fellow e-commerce founder who had exited his company. He helped me scale without losing my mind. He also helped me hire an actual operations manager, which was life-changing. Fast forward to today. We have 5 full-time employees, 2 warehouses, 1 in LA, 1 in Toronto, and I'm working on a book called Sock It To Me, How I Accidentally Build a Business Around Punts. We launched a sock subscription box last quarter and just crossed 10,000 active subscribers. Looking back, it still feels unreal. I wasn't a sock guy. I didn't know textiles or retail or fashion. I just followed an instinct that people want to laugh a little more, even if it's just when they look down at their feet. The margins are tight. The hustle is relentless. But there's a weird kind of peace in knowing you bid on something ridiculous and won. And yeah, my dad wears my socks now. He still doesn't totally get it, but every Christmas he asks for a new box. I accidentally built a $4.5 million business selling overpriced notebooks and nearly lost my mind doing it. Here's how it happened. So, first off, I wasn't trying to become a notebook mogul. I was just a burned-out marketing freelancer in Portland, juggling too many clients and not enough money. I'd gotten laid off from a startup a year earlier and swore I'd never have a boss again. What I didn't realize is that having 12 clients is like having 12 bosses, but worse, because none of them talk to each other and half of them forget to pay you on time. Anyway, the story really starts at a coffee shop. I was working on some copy for a client's artisanal protein bar website. Yes, that's a thing. And this guy next to me had this gorgeous notebook, leather-bound, subtle gold edges, heavy paper. I'm talking chef's kiss quality. I asked where he got it. He told me it was from Italy and cost $90. I laughed. $90? For a notebook? But I kept thinking about it. I mean, I'm a sucker for a good notebook, and I had 6 half-used Moleskines in my backpack at that very moment. Maybe other people are suckers too. That night, I did some light Googling. Turns out there's a whole market for premium stationery. Luxury journals, leather planners, fountain pen-friendly paper. It's a vibe. But most of the options were either super old school, like Mont Blanc and Smythson, or they looked like they were designed by robots. My dumb lizard brain whispered, you could make a sexy notebook for creative millennials. I didn't listen. Then I spent 3 days in Canva mocking up my own version, just for fun. Then I started Googling manufacturers. Within a week, I had samples arriving at my apartment. The first ones were trash. Thin paper, smelly leather, weird stitching. But the 5th sample? Oh, baby. 120 GSM paper, lay-flat binding, full-grain leather. It felt like a journal Indiana Jones would use. So now I had this notebook. I named it Ember. Don't ask me why. Sounded artsy. I built a simple Shopify site over the weekend, threw together a brand with a friend who owed me a favor, and launched an Instagram page. I had 0 followers, 0 email list, and no clue how to run e-commerce. But I did know how to write ad copy. I ran $500 worth of Facebook ads, just targeting fellow creatives, writers, designers, founders, etc. I positioned Ember as the journal for people who give a damn about what they create. Price? $38. Just enough to feel premium, not enough to feel insane. In the first week, I got 63 orders. I had no boxes, no tape, no clue how shipping worked. I packed each one by hand with a little note and a wax seal because I thought it would be on brand. Spoiler, it was, but it was so stupidly inefficient. Still, people loved it. The first reviews came in. A woman called it the most intentional feeling journal I've ever owned. Someone else said, I didn't know a notebook could make me feel confident. I reinvested every dollar back into ads and inventory. I started offering limited edition colors. I added bundles. I launched a smaller pocket version called Ember Mini. People lost their minds over that one. Within 6 months, I'd sold over 10,000 units. But here's where things started getting not so cute. I hired a fulfillment center in Utah to handle shipping. They messed up half the orders in December. A factory overseas sent me a batch with the wrong logo. A TikToker with a big following made a video saying Ember was just a fancy Moleskine knockoff, and it went semi-viral. Traffic dropped 40% overnight. Also, I was still solo, doing customer service emails at 2 a.m., fixing ad campaigns that broke, restocking inventory, designing the next version. I was sleeping 5 hours a night and drinking enough coffee to power a small jet. Eventually, I hired a part-time VA, then a head of ops, then someone to run ads. I built a team of 4. We hit $1 million in revenue by month 14. By year 2, Ember had a cult following. We did collabs with artists, ran pop-ups in NYC and LA, got featured in GQ and Fast Company. At our peak, we were doing $300,000 per month. But I was miserable. I built this thing that people loved, and I couldn't enjoy it. I was constantly in launch mode. We launched a planner, then a sketchbook, then another colorway, then custom embossing. My brain was a browser with 79 tabs open, all playing music. In year 3, I took a 2-week vacation to Italy and didn't bring my laptop. That trip changed everything. I realized I didn't want to grow Ember into a mega brand. I just wanted it to be sustainable, profitable, calm. So I made some big changes. We shut down wholesale, stopped running 10 campaigns at once, streamlined SKUs, and raised prices. Sales dipped 15%, but margins doubled. Profit actually went up. I finally paid myself more than $50,000 for the first time in 3 years. Today, Ember is a lean team of 6. We don't chase trends. We don't scale for scale's sake. We just make great notebooks for people who care. We're on track to do $4.5 million this year, with healthy margins and zero outside investment. And me? I work 30 hours a week, see a therapist, and write in an Ember journal every morning. If I could tell past me one thing, it would be this. Don't start a business just to escape something. Start it to build towards something. And also, your first batch of wax seals will melt in the mailbox. Don't use wax seals. I never planned on becoming an entrepreneur. Honestly, I used to roll my eyes whenever someone said they hustled 24/7 or that 9-to-5s are for suckers. I had a good job, comfortable, decent pay. I was a product designer at a mid-sized tech company in Boston, making around $110,000 a year with benefits and a cushy hybrid setup. I liked my team. Life was good. Then 2 things happened in the span of 5 months. My dad died, and my job laid off half the team, me included. My dad was a printer by trade, ran a little print shop in central Massachusetts for 30 years. He was one of those guys who showed up every day at 6 a.m., didn't take vacations, and somehow made a tiny business work. I never thought much about it growing up. It was just Dad doing his thing with old ink machines and huge rolls of paper. When he died, the shop was barely breaking even, running on fumes. I was his only kid. Suddenly I had to decide whether to shut it down, sell it, or do something with it. I was 33, unemployed, single, and deep into what I later recognized as a kind of burnout/depression spiral. So I did something really stupid, according to my friends. I moved back to my hometown and decided to revive my dad's print shop. At first, I had no clue what I was doing. My design background helped a bit, but offset printing is a totally different world. The machines were decades old. The client list was like a time capsule from 2003. Everything was paper invoices and fax orders. But I couldn't shake this weird urge to try. What I did have was time, severance, and a desperate need for purpose. I spent 2 months just watching YouTube videos, cleaning the shop, and trying to get a sense of what was salvageable. I brought in a tech buddy of mine to help me set up a basic website and figure out how to digitize orders. We hooked up a Shopify backend to a custom order form, kept it stupid simple: business cards, brochures, flyers, wedding invites. The weird part? Orders trickled in, mostly locals who remembered my dad. Then a designer I knew from my old job reached out to see if I could do a short run of 500 high-quality brochures on recycled paper for a small sustainability conference. I priced it way too low just to get the job, but it came out beautiful. She posted about it on LinkedIn. 2 weeks later, I got an email from a branding agency in Vermont. They were looking for a small-scale print partner that could do short runs with high attention to detail. Turns out, a bunch of boutique design agencies were getting sick of the big print-on-demand services that were cheap but inconsistent. I found a niche without realizing it: small volume, high quality, artisanal printing for people who actually cared about paper. So I leaned in. I didn't try to scale fast. I didn't take outside funding. I just kept the operation small and clean. I hired a retired printer from a nearby town who knew more than I ever would about the machinery. I invested in one new digital press and refurbished the old Heidelberg my dad had babied for years. I put all my effort into branding the shop as a kind of retro-modern artisan print house. Think craft beer, but with cardstock. By year 2, we were profitable. I paid myself maybe $45,000 that year, but the shop was alive again. We had 3 people, steady work, and most of our clients came from word of mouth or small design agency referrals. Then COVID hit. The entire events industry shut down, and with it, a lot of our brochure/invite work disappeared overnight. I thought we were done. But something weird happened again. With everyone stuck at home, there was this mini boom in people wanting real, physical things. We started doing short-run custom journals, recipe cards, family memory books. I even worked with an Etsy seller to do a line of letterpress tarot cards that went viral on TikTok. We couldn't print fast enough. The thing I didn't expect was how deeply satisfying it felt to work on something tangible. After a decade in tech where everything was digital and ephemeral, printing something I could hold in my hand and seeing a customer light up over a perfect foil-stamped wedding invitation was bizarrely fulfilling. I stopped checking LinkedIn. I stopped chasing titles or worrying about climbing the ladder. I was building something that felt real, both literally and metaphorically. Last year, we did $740,000 in revenue. I took home $92,000. We have 5 employees now, and I'm in the process of training a young apprentice who might be able to run the shop in 5 years. I'm not rich. I don't have a Tesla or a beach house or any of that. But I get to wake up and walk into a building my dad built with his hands, using machines older than me to create beautiful things for people who still care about paper in a world that's gone all screen. Every so often, someone from my old life messages me, "Hey, you still doing that printing thing?" They usually assume it's a phase or that I'm broke. But I'm not. I just found a weird little corner of the world where I could make something meaningful, and I leaned into it. I get to build something with my hands, solve creative problems every day, and carry on a legacy I never knew meant so much to me until I almost lost it. Entrepreneurship didn't make me rich. It made me whole. I started my first real business because I was pissed off. Let me back up. I've always had a streak of DIY in me. In high school, I sold custom-built PCs to classmates and helped local small businesses get basic websites running. In college, I did the usual hustle, tutoring, reselling sneakers, even a brief stint flipping rare Pokemon cards. But nothing ever stuck. Everything was either too seasonal, too dependent on others, or just didn't scale. After graduation, I got a job at a mid-sized marketing agency. The pay was okay, the office snacks were decent, and my coworkers were fine. But I hated it. I hated the bureaucracy, the fact that most of our innovative campaigns were just recycled templates from years past. Most of all, I hated the way clients were charged thousands for things I could do in an afternoon. So when I say I started my business because I was pissed off, I mean I couldn't take one more day of billing 15 hours for something I knew took me 4. I felt like I was complicit in some weird corporate scam. One night, while complaining to a friend, a software dev at a health tech startup, he half-jokingly said, "Why don't you just build something that actually saves businesses money instead of padding invoices?" And that's when it clicked. I started thinking about how often businesses, especially small ones, get overcharged for super basic services. Things like email list management, simple landing pages, basic analytics dashboards. All stuff that's not hard, just tedious. What if I could productize those services, simplify them, and charge way less? That's how Sniplight was born. The idea was simple. Offer ultra-focused micro SaaS tools for small businesses, priced transparently and affordably. No bloated features. Just what they needed to get stuff done. The first tool was embarrassingly simple. It was a landing page builder with pre-written copy templates for dentists, salons, and realtors. I coded it in 2 weeks using a basic Laravel backend and a Bootstrap frontend. I launched it on Product Hunt under the name Sniplight Sites with a $9 per month subscription. I got 14 paying customers in the first week. I couldn't believe it. People were actually willing to pay for something I built. No middleman, no agency, no strategy meetings. That little one gave me momentum. I spent the next 3 months building out 2 more tools, Sniply Mail, a dead simple newsletter scheduler, and Sniply Stats, a dashboard that combined basic analytics from Google, MailChimp, and Stripe. Each tool cost $5 to $10 per month, and users could bundle them. I called it the Sniply Stack. By month 6, I had 470 paying users and was making about $3,200 per month in recurring revenue. Not life-changing, but way more than the agency job was giving me after taxes and commute costs. I quit. That was both the best and worst decision I've ever made. Let's talk about the worst part first. I underestimated how much of my early success came from novelty. After the initial product hunt bump and a few write-ups in newsletters like Indie Hackers and SaaS Weekly, things plateaued. Churn went up. People wanted more features. Customer support started to eat into my dev time. And then came my biggest mistake. I hired too fast. I brought on a part-time dev and a freelance marketer using my modest MRR as justification. The dev was great. The marketer, not so much. She was enthusiastic, but didn't understand the target market. I wasted $4,500 on campaigns that went nowhere. I ended up doing most of the growth work myself anyway. I also made the rookie mistake of adding features just because a few users asked for them. Pretty soon, Sniply stats looked like Frankenstein's monster, bloated, buggy, and confusing. I got my first refund requests, then my first chargeback. By month 9, MR dropped to $2,100. I was burning savings, stressed, and considering crawling back to agency life with my tail between my legs. But I'm stubborn and pissed off, remember? So I did something painful. I nuked Sniply stats. I emailed everyone using it, gave them 2 months' notice, and refunded anyone who asked. Then I reworked my entire value proposition around what had actually worked. Focus tools that did one thing really well, with zero fluff. I also made a decision to stop chasing new tools and instead double down on the ones that were sticky, Sniply Sites and Sniply Mail. I rebuilt both from the ground up, using Tailwind and Alpine.js this time. I focused heavily on onboarding. I added Loom videos walking through setup. I created industry-specific templates and automated as much as possible. That's when things turned around. A user who ran a chain of yoga studios messaged me to say she used Sniply to launch 7 different landing pages and grew her email list by 500%. She posted a thread on Twitter. That got picked up by a fitness newsletter. I added a fitness bundle to the homepage, then a real estate one, then one for indie authors. Growth became less about features and more about positioning. By month 18, I was at $8,900 MRR. By month 24, $13,400. I brought the dev back on full-time and hired a part-time support rep from the Philippines. I created a Slack community for users and began seeing people help each other troubleshoot landing pages. That was surreal. But the real turning point came in year 3. A VC who had used Sniply sites for a side project reached out and asked if I'd consider selling. I wasn't planning on it, but I humored the convo. They made an offer, low 6 figures. I said no. 2 months later, another buyer reached out, this one from a bootstrapped micro PE firm. They weren't just buying tools. They were buying profitable tiny SaaS products that had low churn and steady revenue. I negotiated a sale for $410,000 with a 3-month transition period. No earnout, no golden handcuffs. I signed the paperwork sitting in a tiny coffee shop with a crappy latte in one hand and my laptop in the other. When the wire hit, I stared at my bank account for 5 full minutes. Then I just laughed. Not because I was rich, but because I had pulled it off. I had built something, scaled it, and exited, without funding, without a team of 20, without any real startup experience. I took a break after the sale, traveled, learned to surf badly, helped my cousin launch her Etsy business. Then I got itchy again. Now I'm working on something new. It's not flashy, and I'm not going to talk about it until it's real. But this time, I'm not building out of rage. This time, I'm building because I can. I never planned to be an entrepreneur. Actually, I spent most of my 20s avoiding responsibility like it owed me money. I dropped out of college twice, bounced between jobs, lived with 4 roommates in a 2-bedroom apartment, and thought a career was something people with LinkedIn profiles worried about. That all changed because of a broken toilet. Let me explain. It was the summer of 2019. I was 29, delivering food part-time, freelancing when I could, and spending way too much time gaming. My roommate, Josh, clogged our toilet for the 3rd time that month, and our landlord's emergency plumber was apparently on sabbatical. I ended up watching 4 hours of YouTube to figure out how to snake a drain properly. Not only did I fix it, I felt an absurd rush of pride, like I had performed brain surgery on porcelain. That night, I joked on Instagram about starting a business called, Dude, Where's My Plunger? I got a bunch of laughing emojis, and then one DM from a friend. No joke, I'd actually pay you to fix my sink. That stuck with me. I didn't rush out to start a business. But over the next few weeks, I found myself fixing little things for friends. clogged sinks, jammed doors. One time, I even built a new bed frame for a friend's mom. She tipped me $100. That was more than I made in a day delivering sushi. One night, while browsing Reddit, I saw a thread about local service arbitrage, basically connecting people who need a service with people who can provide it, without being the one doing the work. Lightbulb moment. What if I wasn't just the guy with the plunger? What if I organized all the guys with plungers? I started small. I put up a free website with Wix, called it Fixly, I know, real original, and offered a range of home repair services, plumbing, painting, furniture assembly, etc. Thing is, I wasn't doing any of it myself. I went on Craigslist and local Facebook groups, found 5 reliable handymen, and told them I'd send them gigs if they gave me a cut. They were skeptical but agreed to a 70-30th split, 70 for them, 30 for me, because they were already scraping for jobs. I put up a few Google ads with a $300 limit, all I could spare, targeting people searching handyman near me in my city. That first month, we got 12 jobs. My cut was $520. I hadn't made that much legally in a while. I reinvested every cent into ads. By month 3, we were getting 3 to 4 jobs a day. I had to build a spreadsheet to track everything, who was taking which gig, payments, customer feedback, etc. My room looked like a detective's war room, sticky notes everywhere. Then COVID hit. My initial reaction was panic. People stopped inviting strangers into their homes. Calls dried up. I thought it was over. But weirdly, after a few weeks, demand came roaring back. People were home 24/7, noticing all the broken crap they'd been ignoring for years. Suddenly, home repairs were essential. I pivoted hard. Got a business Zoom account. Started offering free video consultations. Trained my crew to follow safety protocols. Branded us as COVID-safe handymen. It worked. Big time. In October 2020, I officially registered the business as Fixly Services LLC. We expanded to 2 more cities. I hired a real developer to build a proper site and integrated scheduling software. I was still doing customer service and scheduling myself, often until 2 a.m. I didn't care. I was obsessed. Revenue in 2021 was $412,000. Profit after paying contractors and expenses? $89,000. I gave myself a $40,000 salary. It was the most money I'd ever seen in my life. But 2022 hit different. I made my first hiring mistake. I brought on a guy named Brandon to manage operations in our new city. He was charismatic and had experience, but within 2 months, I got complaints from contractors saying he was rude, unresponsive, and late with payments. One even threatened to sue. I had to cut him loose, refund 3 customers, and do serious reputation damage control. Lesson learned: charisma without competence is a ticking time bomb. At the same time, bigger players started noticing. Thumbtack, Angie, even TaskRabbit ads were now showing up next to mine. I realized I couldn't outspend them, but I could outlocal them. I doubled down on local SEO, created pages for each neighborhood, got contractors to take photos and write mini-blogs about their jobs, installing a new faucet in Logan Square. Google started showing us higher in maps. It was slow but effective. By early 2023, we were doing $70,000 per month in revenue. I'd hired a full-time admin, a marketing assistant, and built a stable of 20-plus contractors across 4 cities. I wasn't rich, but I had something real. Then came acquisition talks. A small property management tech company reached out, said they were building a marketplace for home services, wanted to integrate with Fixly. I thought it was a scam at first, but after 3 Zoom calls, I realized they were serious. They offered to acquire Fixly for $650,000, $350K cash, $100,000 in stock, and the rest in earnouts over 2 years. I almost said yes immediately, but I didn't. Not because it wasn't a good offer, but because I hadn't done this for money. I did it because for the first time in my life, I had built something that mattered. Something that wasn't a joke or a side hustle or a late-night idea over beers. I countered. We settled on $780,000. I stayed on as a consultant for a year. They gave my contractors better rates, upgraded the tech, and honestly, ran things smoother than I ever did. I finally took a vacation. So now, at 35, I'm not rich, but I'm debt-free, have enough to invest in a few startups, and I'm helping my cousin launch a landscaping tech platform. Full circle from plungers and leaky sinks. If there's one takeaway here, it's this. The idea doesn't have to be genius. It just has to solve a real problem. And you have to care more than the next guy. That's it. Hey, Friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. I always thought those people were kind of full of themselves, grinding 24/7, talking about vision, burning through investors' money on ping pong tables and weird snacks. That wasn't me. I liked having a paycheck. I liked sleeping in on Sundays and knowing what my next month looked like. Then I got fired. It was August 2019, and I was working at a small marketing agency in Chicago. I wasn't great at it, to be honest. I was good with clients, bad with structure. I'd miss deadlines, forget to log hours, stuff like that. My boss called it a mutual fit issue. I called it humiliating. They gave me 2 weeks of severance and an awkward Zoom goodbye because I was remote most days. I started applying for jobs immediately, of course. Marketing coordinator, brand strategist, content manager, whatever I could get. I got a few interviews, no offers. Then the pandemic hit in early 2020. Job market flatlined. My savings shrank like wool in a hot wash. One night, while drinking cheap whiskey and doomscrolling LinkedIn, I saw someone post about how they'd made $6,000 in a month running Facebook ads for local businesses. No experience needed. Just hustle. I knew Facebook ads. Barely. I'd run a campaign or two back at the agency, usually with a specialist watching over my shoulder. But I figured I had nothing to lose. I made a landing page using a Wix template and pitched myself as a performance marketing consultant. The name I picked was North Peak Digital. It sounded serious, like a firm that would charge a lot. I spent $17 on a logo. It had a mountain in it, obviously. For a while, nothing happened. Then, out of the blue, this guy named Dave messaged me. He ran a chain of laundromats in the Midwest and wanted to test Facebook ads to promote a new pickup and delivery service. I think he assumed I was more legit than I was. I charged him $500 for a 1-month test. I had no idea what I was doing, but I set up a campaign targeting local zip codes, wrote some copy, used photos from Unsplash, and just let it run. The CTR was bad. The conversions were worse. I almost refunded him out of guilt, but he was weirdly chill about it and told me to keep at it. That was the moment something clicked. I stopped trying to be an agency. I just focused on helping Dave. I asked him tons of questions. Why people liked the service. Who the most loyal customers were. I got obsessed with solving his problem. I relaunched the campaign 2 weeks later with a tighter message and a lead form instead of sending people to a sketchy page. Leads jumped from 5 in the first month to 47. He was pumped. I doubled my fee for month 2. I decided to niche down. Hyperlocal Facebook ads for pickup and delivery services. I cold emailed 50 laundry businesses in 10 days. Got 0 replies. Then I changed my subject line to got customers within 5 miles and finally got 2 bites. One turned into a $750 per month retainer. By fall 2020, I had 5 clients paying between $500 to $1,200 per month. I still didn't feel like a real entrepreneur, but I was making more than I had at my job, and I didn't have to answer to anyone. That felt dangerous. Like someone had given me the keys to a car I wasn't licensed to drive. I made a lot of dumb mistakes. I forgot to turn off a campaign during a snowstorm and cost a client $300 in no-shows. I got flagged by Facebook for running a health ad that violated their policies. I nearly burned a bridge with a client because I ghosted their emails for 2 days during a mental health dip. But I learned. In 2021, I hired my cousin, who was between jobs, as a part-time VA. She cleaned up my inbox, kept the books, and followed up with leads. That freed me up to build systems. I created onboarding docs, standardized ad templates, and started offering Google Ads too. Then I got a call from a guy named Raj who ran a small chain of mobile dog groomers in Texas. He wanted leads in 4 zip codes. I'd never done anything with pet services, but I said yes. I crushed it for him, like 140 leads in 3 weeks, and he referred me to 3 friends. Suddenly, dog groomers became my thing. I rebranded the whole business, Fetch Leads. I leaned all the way in. New website, testimonials, a goofy cartoon dog mascot. I even bought a little jingle on Fiverr for $20. My cousin became full-time, and I brought in a freelance ad strategist I met in a Facebook group. By the end of 2021, we were at $22,000 per month in recurring revenue. But here's where the story gets weird. A client asked if we could build a simple CRM for them. Nothing crazy, just something where they could track leads, send texts, and mark who booked. I'd been using Google Sheets plus Zapier, but it was clunky. So I found a no-code developer on Upwork and paid him $3,000 to build a little web app. We called it PubTrack. It worked, okay, a little buggy, but the client loved it. Then another one asked for it. Then another. Within a few months, more people were asking for the CRM than the ads. I was stubborn. I kept saying, we're a marketing agency, not a SaaS company. But revenue doesn't lie. By early 2022, PubTrack was bringing in $12,000 per month in subscriptions, more than half our income. I made the call. We go all in on software. We spun off Fetch Leads into its own brand and hired a small dev team, just 2 guys from Eastern Europe and a PM I found on LinkedIn. We rebuilt PubTrack from scratch, launched a real dashboard, added SMS integrations, calendar sync, everything. Pricing started at $99 per month. Our first 100 users came from our agency clients. The next 500 came from word of mouth. I got interviewed on a pet groomer podcast. We ran a giveaway for a free grooming van. By late 2022, we passed $50,000 MRR. I shut down the ad side entirely in January 2023. It felt like killing my firstborn, but it was the right call. The margins on SaaS were better, and honestly, I was burnt out on client work. I missed the early days, but I didn't miss chasing invoices or apologizing for algorithm changes. Today, PubTrack is doing about $120,000 per month in revenue with 800+ active users. We have a team of 9. I'm not the CEO anymore. We hired someone smarter than me to run things, but I'm still heavily involved in product and strategy. Here's the kicker. I still don't think of myself as a real entrepreneur. I just solved one problem, then another, then another. The business grew because I got curious and stayed that way. If I had to leave you with one lesson, it's this. Don't start a company. Start helping someone. And when enough people ask for your help, turn that help into a system. Then get out of your own way. I used to run a digital marketing agency that made over $400,000 a year. Now I sell high-end compost toilets out of my garage, and I've never been happier. This all started about 4 years ago. Back then, I was crushing it, as people say. I had a sleek site, 3 full-time employees, a dozen contractors, and a decent client list that included a SaaS company, 2 lifestyle brands, and a couple of startups that were always late on payments but fun to work with. I was 29, overworked, and slowly burning out. Marketing is one of those fields where you're expected to be on all the time. You're supposed to stay on top of every trend: TikTok, AI copywriting, video funnels, SEO changes, and clients want results yesterday. They don't care that the algorithm shifted or that their product is objectively boring. They want engagement, conversions, and growth. That pressure, combined with managing a team and trying to be a cool boss, had me glued to my phone and laptop 70 hours a week. Then the pandemic hit. Most of our clients pulled back. We lost 60% of our revenue in 4 months. I cut my own salary first, then the team's hours, and finally had to let 2 people go. I went back to freelancing while trying to keep the agency afloat. Around that time, my girlfriend, now wife, and I moved out of the city to a cabin her uncle owned in Vermont. It had no plumbing, just solar panels, a wood stove, and a composting toilet. Let me tell you, I hated that toilet. At first, it smelled weird. It felt like camping every day, but something shifted after a couple weeks. I realized the toilet actually worked. It didn't smell once I learned how to maintain it. It used no water, needed no septic tank, and was clean in a low-tech kind of way. Plus, we didn't have a monthly water bill. Then I went down a rabbit hole. I started researching sustainable living, composting systems, off-grid homes. I found entire online communities obsessed with this stuff. Tiny home people, van lifers, homesteaders. But when I looked into the products they were using, especially toilets, I noticed something weird. The market sucked. Most compost toilets were either hideous plastic thrones or outrageously expensive imported systems. The $1,000 Swedish models were nice, but had long wait times. And customer service? Practically non-existent. I joked to my girlfriend, I should just make a toilet people actually want. She laughed. I didn't. Over the next few months, I sketched designs, watched hundreds of hours of DIY builds on YouTube, and interviewed people in forums about what they liked or hated about existing models. Then I built a prototype in our shed using reclaimed wood, a urine diverter I 3D printed, and a vent fan rigged to a car battery. It worked. I mean, It was ugly, but it worked. And it didn't smell. That fall, I put up a single-page website for a new company I called Earth Throne. I took professional photos of the second prototype, built a waiting list, and shared the link in a few forums. I expected to maybe get a dozen people curious. I woke up to 387 email signups. I thought it was spam at first. Then I checked the analytics, real users. Comments like, "Finally something that doesn't look like a hospital toilet," and "Please let me know when you're taking orders." So I took a gamble. I emailed the list offering 10 early bird slots at $895 each for handmade compost toilets made from reclaimed materials with customizable finishes. I'd build them myself and ship within 10 weeks. All 10 slots sold in 2 days. I spent the next month in full-on maker mode. Cutting, sanding, staining, sealing. I hired a local metalworker to fabricate the hinges and brackets. I packed each unit by hand and personally called every buyer to walk them through installation. The feedback? Overwhelmingly positive. Only one person had an issue with the shipping time, which was fair. I was late by 3 days. But here's the crazy part. Those first 10 customers became my evangelists. They posted photos on Instagram, YouTube, Reddit. Suddenly, I had vanlifers and tiny home influencers messaging me asking for one. Orders started rolling in. 15 one month, 22 the next, 30 after that. That was 2.5 years ago. Today, Earth Throne makes around $25,000 to $40,000 a month. It's still a small operation. I've hired 2 people to help with production, and I partner with a nearby workshop that CNC cuts our wood components now. Every toilet is still assembled and finished in my garage, soon moving to a dedicated shop, and each one ships with a personal thank you note and a maintenance kit. Our customers are mostly off-grid homeowners, eco-conscious families, and adventure van enthusiasts. We've even had a few weird clients. One guy installed one in his NYC apartment to stop being dependent on the system. I don't ask too many questions. What I've learned: 1. Niches are powerful. I went from fighting over generic marketing contracts to owning a sliver of a market that's weirdly underserved. I don't have to be the best toilet company in the world, just the best for my people. 2. Passion matters more than polish. My first prototype was clunky. My website was basic. But people loved the idea. They wanted someone who cared about their problems, not just profit. 3. Don't be afraid to pivot completely. I trained in marketing. I had no carpentry experience beyond building IKEA furniture. But learning is free, and the internet is generous. 4. Selling something real feels different. There's a deep satisfaction in knowing something I built is in someone's home, solving a problem, every single day. I never felt that with digital marketing, no matter how big the campaign. Do I miss the agency life? Sometimes. The money was better, at least on paper. But this business is real. I can see it, touch it, smell it, or not smell it, ideally. I still do a bit of freelance consulting here and there, mostly for fun. But Earth Throne is my full-time job now. We're working on a second product, a modular gray water filtration system for tiny homes, and looking into retail partnerships for later this year. It's weird to say this, but poop changed my life. I never thought a breakup would turn me into an entrepreneur, but here we are. About 5 years ago, I was in a long-term relationship with someone I genuinely thought I'd marry. We were living in Seattle, both in our late 20s, working tech-adjacent jobs, me in UX design, her in product management. We had a nice apartment, a shared dog, and even a shared Costco membership. Things were comfortable. Boring, maybe, but stable. Then she got a job offer in San Francisco. Big money, prestige, the works. I encouraged her to take it, because that's what supportive partners do, right? She said she wanted to do long distance for a bit and see how things went. Cool. I could work remote 2 days a week and fly down now and then. 3 months into it, she ghosted me. No dramatic fight, no betrayal that I could point to. Just one day, she stopped replying. No breakup text, nothing. I found out later through a mutual friend that she had started dating a coworker. It destroyed me. So I did what a lot of people do after a brutal breakup. I got obsessed with something. Anything to fill the hours. For me, it was candles. Yeah, I know. Not what you were expecting. I had always liked scents, candles, essential oils, diffusers, but it was never more than a passing interest. Then I fell down a rabbit hole of candle-making YouTube videos, Reddit posts, and blogs. There was something meditative about it. Melting wax, blending oils, pouring it all into these little glass jars. It was chemistry and craft and aesthetic all in one. I started making candles at night after work in my tiny kitchen. My dog, Winston, would sit by the door and just watch me mix wax like I was cooking meth. At first, I gave them away. Friends, neighbors, coworkers. Then someone asked to buy one. Then two. Then a friend told me I should put them on Etsy. I laughed, but then I did it. I called the shop Ghostlight, half because of the theater term, half because of how she ghosted me. Petty, I know. To my surprise, the shop took off. I didn't have branding, or a logo, or even nice photos. Just a moody name, some minimalist labels I printed on my inkjet, and names like Last Word, Midnight Spiral, and Unread Message. People seemed to love it. I was spending my evenings and weekends melting wax and fulfilling orders. I maxed out my kitchen space, bought a second-hand shelving unit from a closing barbershop, and just kept going. Then came the turning point. One of my scents, empty apartment, got featured on a small home decor blog. It was this weird blend of cedarwood, white musk, and figure. It smelled like clean sadness. The blogger described it as what healing feels like in scent form. The post went viral. I sold out in 2 days. I had to scale, fast. I took a week off work and turned my apartment into a full production zone. My landlord hated it. I spilled wax in the sink, burned my thumb. My dog was stressed. But I was alive in a way I hadn't felt since before the breakup. I made the hardest decision of my life. I quit my job. That was 2 years ago. Today, Ghostlight is my full-time business. We're still small, 3 full-time employees, 1 part-timer, and a few freelancers. We ship about 3,000 candles a month, all hand-poured, all with names that sound like band albums or therapy breakthroughs. New Static, Half a Cigarette, Soft Ghost. We have a cult following on TikTok. A few celebrity shoutouts. Our margins are decent, our customers loyal. And yes, I did eventually move out of that wax-covered apartment. Now we operate out of a cozy little studio space in Capitol Hill, Seattle. Winston has his own corner with a plush bed and a name tag that says Chief Sniffer. But here's the weirdest part. About 6 months ago, I got a message on Instagram from my ex. She wrote, "I saw a Ghostlight candle in a boutique in SF. I picked it up and somehow knew it was yours. We talked. Briefly. She apologized. I told her she didn't owe me anything. We're not friends, and we probably never will be. But I thanked her genuinely. Because if she hadn't ghosted me, I'd probably still be living that safe, boring life. Making UX wireframes and convincing myself it was enough. Instead, I make fire in a jar. Funny how that works. I started my first real business with a lie. I didn't mean to lie. Not really. But I did. I was 24, broke, living in a shared apartment where I had to schedule showers. I had just gotten laid off from my 3rd job in 2 years, and my career, at that point, was basically being good at Googling my way through interviews. One night, over cheap beers with my roommate, I half-joked that I could run a freelance design agency better than the one I just got canned from. My roommate, who had no business background whatsoever, just looked at me and said, "So do it." I laughed. "With what money?" He shrugged. "Make it up. Fake it until you make it." And for whatever reason, maybe because I had nothing to lose, maybe because it was 2 a.m. and I was slightly buzzed, I made a website. I named the agency Luma Creative because it sounded like a real design studio. I cobbled the site together using a Squarespace template and a bunch of fake team bios I wrote myself. I gave us cool names like Head of UX Strategy, Brand Vision Lead, things I barely understood. My portfolio? Entirely stuff I had done during college or personal projects I'd mocked up to get hired. I threw it all on there. Boom. Luma Creative was live. Now, I had to find clients. Or more accurately, trick someone into thinking we were a real agency. I went on Reddit and posted in r/startups, r/entrepreneur ride along, even r/small business. I wasn't spammy. I'd just chime in on threads like, need help with branding or looking for a logo designer, acting like I was part of this established agency that had worked with multiple early-stage startups. I also emailed small local businesses pretending to be from our business development team, offering a free consultation. Half never responded. Some said, no thanks. But a few asked for calls. That's when panic set in. I created this whole agency, but I was still just one guy in sweatpants working off a $200 laptop. So I leaned into the lie. I got a free Zoom account, set up a fake email signature, and started scheduling calls. I'd say things like, our lead designer is working on another project right now, but I'll personally oversee yours. Or, I'll loop in our copy strategist later this week. And somehow, it started working. My first real client was a guy in Arizona who was launching a subscription box for coffee lovers. He wanted a logo, packaging mock-ups, and a landing page. I quoted him $3,000. He said yes so fast I thought I undercharged by $10,000. That $3,000 paid my rent, groceries, and internet for the next 2 months. But more importantly, it made me realize this whole thing might be real if I stopped pretending and started building. So I reworked the site, scrapped the fake bios, changed the copy to be more boutique and honest, a one-person design studio helping startups launch faster and look better. Suddenly, people responded even better. I still wasn't an agency, but I was a business. Then came the hard part, growth. After about 6 months of scraping together random projects, I hit a wall. I was still living check to check. If a client ghosted me or pushed their timeline back, I was eating cereal for dinner. I decided to go big. I used my last $600 to fly to a startup networking event in Austin, where I knew nobody, just to hand out cards and talk to founders. I stayed in a sketchy Airbnb above a tattoo parlor and walked everywhere because I couldn't afford Ubers. I met a guy named Josh who was launching a mobile app for home workouts. We got along well, and he asked if I could help with the brand and app UI. He didn't have much money, but he offered equity and a small upfront payment. I said yes, and I'm glad I did. That startup, FitGo, ended up raising $1.8 million about 9 months later. I was still doing all their design work, and Josh insisted I keep the contract even after they scaled. That intro led to 5 more clients. Referrals started happening. Suddenly, I wasn't just a freelancer, I had leverage. I raised my rates. I hired an actual developer to help with builds, then a copywriter. Within a year, I had a real team. 5 of us, all remote, all part-time but solid. And we were doing over $20,000 a month in client work. I paid myself a salary for the first time in my life. It felt fake, but in the best way. Then COVID hit. I panicked. Every client emailed the same week. We need to pause. Projects got cut, timelines disappeared, and our pipeline dried up. I let go of everyone but the developer and kept just enough in reserves to cover 2 more months. I debated giving up. Thought about applying for jobs again. But I didn't. I pivoted. I launched a course, designed for founders. It was a $99 self-paced crash course on branding your startup without hiring an agency. I recorded videos in my room with a mic I borrowed, edited them myself, and launched on Gumroad. That course made $11,000 in the first 2 months, mostly because people were stuck at home and building side projects. I offered free consulting calls with it, which turned into leads, which turned into clients. Luma Creative survived. Now, for years later, we're 10 people strong. We don't pretend to be bigger than we are. We're lean, fast, and real. I still run it from my apartment, now upgraded, and we've worked with over 60 startups across 14 countries. The best part? That guy from Arizona? The coffee box? He's still a client. Sometimes I think about that fake agency website, the made-up titles, the scripted calls where I was pretending to be a team. It was dumb, risky, maybe even unethical in some eyes. But here's the truth. I just needed a crack in the wall, a way in. And when no one would give me a shot, I built the illusion of one, then worked like hell to make it real. So yeah, I started my business with a lie, but I built it with the truth. I never planned to start a business. In fact, I was probably the least likely person to become an entrepreneur. If you'd asked me 5 years ago what I'd be doing now, I would have said something like working my way up the ladder at a marketing firm or burning out in some gray cubicle surrounded by passive-aggressive coworkers. And for a while, that's exactly what I was doing. I graduated college with a communications degree, no real ambition, and a resume padded with unpaid internships. I landed an entry-level job at a mid-sized PR agency in Chicago. The pay sucked, the hours were worse, and the senior staff treated us like we were all just lucky to be there. Maybe we were. For the first year, I did everything I was told, stayed late, smiled during meetings even when I wanted to flip a table, and perfected the art of sending emails that said per my last message without actually saying it. I wasn't happy, but I didn't know what else to do. I didn't think I was particularly talented, and I definitely didn't think I had any kind of business idea worth pursuing. That changed after I got fired. I wasn't even fired for anything scandalous. A new VP came in, wanted to restructure, and about a dozen of us were out the door within a week. No severance, just a cardboard box and a "we'll be in touch." Spoiler, they weren't. I panicked for the first couple of weeks. Sent out applications like my life depended on it, because it kind of did. I had just moved into a slightly nicer apartment I couldn't really afford. My student loans weren't going anywhere, and my savings could cover maybe 2 months if I lived like a hermit. I picked up some freelance work writing product descriptions for an online pet supply store. $10 a description. It was humiliating. But weirdly, I got good at it. Fast. I figured out what made people click, add to cart, even if it was for something dumb like an automatic hamster feeder. And I realized there were a lot of e-commerce sites out there with truly terrible copy. One night, I was having drinks with an old college friend who'd started a small dropshipping business. She was telling me about how her conversion rates sucked, and that she was thinking of paying some conversion guru $5,000 to rewrite her site. I nearly choked on my beer. I offered to do it for $500. I rewrote everything: landing pages, product descriptions, about section, even the cart abandonment emails. A month later, she texted me saying her sales were up 40%. She sent me a screenshot of her Stripe account. I had never seen that many digits before. I charged her another $500 to do the next round. That was the first time I thought, maybe I have something here. I built a terrible-looking Wix website that advertised conversion-focused copywriting for e-commerce and started emailing random Shopify store owners offering to audit their sites for free. Half ignored me. The other half were usually intrigued enough to let me try. I undercharged at first, $100, $150, just to build a portfolio and get testimonials. Within 3 months, I had made more money than I ever did at the PR firm. Still, I didn't call it a business. I thought of it as freelancing, like a phase I'd grow out of once I found a real job. But the work kept coming in. I learned how to pitch better. I started A/B testing email subject lines. I learned which industries had money to burn: skincare, pet products, weirdly expensive kitchen tools, and which ones ghosted me after a free audit. By the end of year 1, I had made about $82,000. That's when I realized this could be more than just paying the bills. I didn't want to be a freelancer forever. I wanted leverage. Recurring revenue. Systems. So I started building. I hired my first contractor, a college student from Toronto, to handle the lower-ticket copywriting gigs. Then another to help with client outreach. I used Notion to build SOPs, taught them how to handle audits, and created swipe files for every niche we specialized in. I turned myself into a manager, even though I had no idea what I was doing half the time. I rebranded the business as WordFlex. Cringe name. I know, but it stuck. We targeted Shopify and WooCommerce businesses doing at least $50,000 per month. Our new offer was simple: a full CRO conversion rate optimization package including copy, layout suggestions, and email flows. $3,000 flat fee. Sales took off. I hired a web designer to give us a real site. Started running LinkedIn ads. Got into a Slack group full of e-commerce founders and started answering questions like my life depended on it. Within a year, WordFlex hit $350,000 in revenue. I moved into a better apartment. I stopped having panic attacks before checking my bank account. But the thing no one tells you about running a business is that the money doesn't make it easier, it just makes the problems bigger. I had scope creep issues, clients ghosting after final invoices, team members dropping the ball. At one point, I was handling customer service, HR, sales, and QA all in the same week. I hit burnout again. Worse this time, because now I had people depending on me. I took a week off and went to Colorado. Didn't even ski. Just sat around drinking overpriced lattes and thinking about whether I wanted to keep going. The answer was yes, but only if I changed the model. I started productizing our services. Instead of custom quotes, we now had WordFlex kits, pre-scoped packages for specific niches. The pet brand kit, the skincare starter, the premium kitchen playbook. We bundled templates, audits, and 2 rounds of revisions. People loved the clarity. It let us scale faster without killing quality. We hit $750,000 the next year. I brought on a COO, my first real hire with an actual resume, and let go of the stuff I hated: bookkeeping, hiring, email chains with nitpicky clients. I focused on partnerships, building relationships, and making our offers irresistible. Now it's been almost 4 years since I got fired from that PR job. WordFlex just crossed $1.2 million in annual revenue. We're fully remote, with 12 team members across 5 countries. We've worked with over 400 brands. I still don't feel like a real entrepreneur most days, but I do feel proud. What I've learned: you don't need a genius idea to start a business. You just need to solve a boring problem that people are willing to pay for. You don't need investors, a co-founder, or an MBA. You just need to keep showing up, even when you're scared or clueless or both. Sometimes getting fired is the best thing that can happen to you. Sometimes hitting bottom is how you build the foundation. And sometimes your dumb freelancing phase becomes the thing that changes your entire life. I didn't set out to become an entrepreneur. In fact, I was actively avoiding it. My dad ran a small auto parts store for most of my childhood. He was one of those classic workaholics, 7 days a week, grease under the fingernails, sleeping in the back office on inventory nights. He made enough to support us, but just barely. I remember his shoulders always looked heavy. The dude carried the world, and it wore him down. So I told myself, never run your own business. I wanted ease, security, a 401k, maybe a ping pong table in the office. I got my degree in marketing, landed a job at a growing e-commerce startup, and climbed fast. I was good at finding trends before they blew up. I could pitch ideas with the right buzzwords, and I stayed late without acting like a martyr. By 28, I was the head of product strategy. I thought I'd made it, but then it all flipped. We were acquired by a conglomerate out of Singapore. They replaced half the leadership team within a month. I lasted 6 more before they restructured me out with a 3-month severance and a LinkedIn message that said, "Let's keep in touch." Right. I floundered. I did the whole self-reinvention thing people do when they get laid off and don't want to admit they're depressed. I started running again. I meditated. I deleted Twitter. I also spent a lot of time at this tiny coffee shop near my apartment. It wasn't on any map, didn't have an Instagram, and didn't even take cards, just cash or Venmo. But it was always packed. The place felt real. With tables, no laptop policy, jazz on Sundays. I got to know the owner, a woman named Juno. She looked like someone who'd fronted a punk band in the 90s and didn't care what you thought about her sourdough. We talked shop a lot. One day, I told her I didn't understand how she made any money with no advertising. She laughed and said, "You're thinking like a guy who's trying to scale something. I'm trying to own something." That stuck. That night, something clicked. I kept thinking about how many places like hers had closed in the past 5 years, independent spots, mom-and-pop cafes, corner shops, all dying because they couldn't keep up with marketing trends, data analytics, or online ordering. It wasn't that people didn't want small businesses, they just didn't find them anymore. So I started sketching out a tool. Not a huge platform, not the next Shopify or DoorDash. Just a lightweight app that would let small brick-and-mortar shops easily set up a basic online presence. Menu, location, hours, simple ordering or reservations. Mobile first, drag and drop. No coding, no jargon, no monthly fees, just a 3% fee per transaction, and that's it. I called it Lantern. I built the MVP using no-code tools and launched a pilot with Juno as my first test client. It took me 2 weeks to set her up, and she doubled her weekend sales within a month. Word spread like wildfire, probably because small business owners talk to each other more than SaaS guys realize. I onboarded 12 more shops within 60 days, all within a 10-block radius. I was still working out of my apartment, using my personal phone as customer support. I didn't sleep much that first year. I did everything: customer service, product updates, user testing, outreach. I pitched it as the anti-Uber Eats, because I refused to charge insane fees or make users feel like they needed a marketing degree to use it. I also didn't raise VC money. Every investor I talked to wanted to turn Lantern into something bigger: franchises, automation, delivery drones. That wasn't the point. By the end of year 1, Lantern had on board 120 businesses. I hired my first 2 employees, a designer and a support rep, using money from transaction fees. We stayed lean. I refused to scale past what we could handle. Our biggest win came from an unexpected place. A Yelp executive tweeted positively about a Lantern-powered bookstore, and suddenly we had hundreds of inquiries from all over the country. Fast forward to now, 3.5 years in. Lantern supports over 900 businesses across 40 states. We've helped bakeries in Idaho, vintage record stores in Florida, and even a goat cheese farm in Vermont. Still no investors. Still no ads. Just word of mouth, community trust, and the idea that not everything needs to be a unicorn startup to matter. It's funny. I used to think entrepreneurship was about grinding until you made it big. Now I think it's about building something that lasts longer than you. Last weekend, My dad visited, and we had breakfast at one of the first cafes that used lantern. He looked around and said, "You know, I would have killed for something like this back in the day. That meant more than any revenue report." So yeah, I didn't plan to start a business. I just wanted a place that didn't suck to disappear. I never meant to start a company. I swear, I was just trying to make enough side cash to cover rent in a city that was trying to evict me with every breath it took. This started about 4 years ago when I was 27, broke, and working at a boutique marketing agency in Atlanta. I was technically a brand strategist, but I mostly made decks, edited copy, and nodded along in client meetings while drinking coffee that tasted like wet pennies. At the time, I lived in this crumbling duplex with my friend, James. We were both just trying to keep our heads above water. I had $312 in my account the day rent was due. James, ever the optimist, suggested we do a little hustle. A hustle like what? I asked. He told me he'd been flipping stuff on Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist. Nothing big, just finding underpriced furniture or electronics and selling them at a markup. I was skeptical, but desperation's a better motivator than ambition. The next weekend, we drove around looking for ugly but solid furniture, dressers, nightstands, and tables. James had an eye for structure. I had a decent hand with sanding and paint. We picked up a couple pieces, refurbished them in the backyard, and listed them online. They sold. Fast. Like 3x what we paid for them. And the more we did it, the faster things moved. Soon, people started asking if we took commissions or custom jobs. That's when we realized we might be onto something. James wanted to call it second look furniture. I hated it, so we compromised and went with Redline Revival. Redline was the name of the street we lived on, and it made us sound edgy. I built a crappy Squarespace site, and we started branding the pieces with our logo. Nothing fancy, just a stencil and white paint. By the end of year 1, we were both doing it full-time. Now, you might be thinking this was some dream rise to success arc. Not even close. We made every mistake you could imagine. We didn't track expenses. We undercharged. We once paid a guy $800 for a used lathe that didn't even work. There was even a point where we got scammed out of $3,500 by a fake interior designer who commissioned a bunch of custom work and ghosted. Our bank couldn't reverse the Zelle transfer. We almost shut it all down right there. But we didn't. Instead, we got smarter. We started logging every cent. We got an LLC. We bought better tools. I taught myself basic accounting via YouTube and late-night panic. James learned how to use SketchUp so we could mock up designs before we committed to builds. We started scheduling drops like sneaker releases, Friday mornings, 10 a.m., limited quantity, first come first serve. And it worked. Scarcity sells. In year 2, we moved into a warehouse space we shared with a motorcycle restoration guy and a woman who sculpted concrete fountains. It smelled like gasoline and wet cement, but it was home. That year, we did about $180,000 in revenue. Not enough to get rich, but enough to breathe. That was the same year we went viral on TikTok. One video, James was filming a time-lapse of us turning a water-damaged dresser into this brutalist black and brass monster. I added a Kendrick song in the background, posted it with some stupid caption like "From Curb Trash to Cash," and forgot about it. 2 days later, we woke up to 1.7 million views. That video changed our lives. We started getting orders from all over the country. People wanted that piece or one like it. We couldn't ship anything cross-country at the time, but we figured it out. Learned how to crate. Partnered with a white-glove delivery company. Hired our first part-time employee, Maria, who was a wizard with logistics. By year 3, we cleared $400,000. We weren't just flipping anymore. We were designing. People sent us photos of their rooms and asked us to build centerpieces. Interior designers started reaching out. We even landed a recurring gig furnishing boutique hotels in Nashville and Charleston. Here's the twist, though. I never loved furniture. I like the business part. The chase. The brand building. The psychology of pricing and scarcity and aesthetic. James, on the other hand, was an artist. He cared deeply about every curve and joint and grain. And slowly, we started diverging. It wasn't a fight. It was more like an unspoken mutual recognition that we wanted different things. So after one long night with way too much bourbon, we made a plan. I'd buy him out of the business over the next 18 months. He'd help train a new head builder. He'd take a commission from every piece we sold based on his designs. We shook on it. Still friends. Fast forward to today. I run Redline Revival full-time. We've got a team of 6 now. We moved into a bigger space, have a fulfillment partnership in 3 states, and just launched our first modular furniture line. And here's the wildest part. We did it without outside investment. No VC. No Shark Tank. No rich uncle. Just side hustles, trial and error, dumb luck, and learning how to sell the hell out of a story. Would I do it again? Honestly, yeah. But I'd skip the broken lathe. I never thought I'd be the guy with a 7-figure business. I always thought that was for finance bros, tech nerds, or people with rich parents. I was just a dude with student loans, a 12-year-old Camry, and a habit of daydreaming too much during work meetings. But somehow, through a combination of rage, caffeine, spite, and dumb luck, I built a niche business that makes over $1.2 million a year, and it all started with my dog peeing on a $300 pair of sneakers. Back in 2019, I was working as a UX designer at a mid-sized agency. Decent pay, boring projects. Think, wireframes for insurance sites and endless stakeholder calls where we argued about button sizes. I wasn't unhappy, but I definitely wasn't thriving either. My apartment was small, I was single, and my golden retriever, Max, was the highlight of my day. One weekend, I had friends over for drinks. Someone left the bedroom door open and Max, in a majestic display of canine rebellion, peed on my friend's sneakers, some limited edition, pastel-colored Nikes that apparently cost more than my weekly grocery bill. I offered to pay him back, but he laughed it off. Still, I felt terrible. I Googled everything I could about odor removal, stain lifting, sneaker restoration, you name it. That night, I went down a rabbit hole of sneakerhead forums, cleaning hacks, and restoration videos. And then I found it, a subreddit thread about boutique sneaker cleaners. Some of these small businesses were charging $60 to $100 for cleaning and restoration services, some even more for high-end shoes. I remember thinking, this can't be that hard. It's just cleaning shoes, right? I started experimenting with Max's victims. I bought some brushes, cleaning solutions, microfiber cloths, and a UV light, don't ask. I started testing on my own shoes, then my friends. I wasn't great at first. I destroyed a pair of white leather Adidas with bleach. But I kept learning, kept testing. I realized that people weren't just paying for clean shoes, they were paying for someone to make them feel new again. 2 months later, I made a bare-bones Instagram page called Fresh Kicks and started posting before and after pics. I listed my services: basic clean, $35, deep restore, $60, premium package, $85. I offered free local pickup and delivery in my city, and I had a day job, so I only took orders on weekends. To my surprise, I got a few DMs almost immediately. College students, sneaker collectors, even a guy who ran a resale side hustle and needed his Jordans looking flawless. I made about $900 in my first month, which felt like a lot when your side hustle is just soap and elbow grease. I reinvested everything. I built a simple Shopify store. I printed some branded thank you cards. I bought better brushes and an ozone deodorizer machine I found on eBay for $200. I was averaging 8 to 10 orders every weekend by month 4. I was exhausted but addicted. Then COVID hit. The lockdowns nuked my agency job overnight. We were all let go via Zoom, just like that. I had severance, maybe 4 months of savings, and panic. But I also had this tiny sneaker cleaning side hustle that was weirdly growing on its own. My DMs doubled during lockdown. Everyone was cleaning out their closets and rediscovering their beat-up Yeezys. Out of desperation or pure adrenaline, I said screw it. I'm going full-time with Fresh Kicks. I offered mail-in services. I found USPS flat-rate boxes and made a printable shipping label system. I turned my living room into a mini workshop with racks, storage bins, a dehumidifier, and a desk. I started offering customization, like sole repainting and lace swaps. TikTok was starting to blow up, so I posted a video of me transforming some grimy Air Force Ones. That one video got 220K views. Orders jumped to 40 a week. I was floored. By early 2021, I was pulling in $18,000 per month in revenue. I hired a part-time assistant, a buddy who got laid off from a pizza place, and moved operations into a shared warehouse space. I added a subscription option for sneakerheads, monthly cleanings for $25 per month. That took off. Resellers, gym bros, and hypebeasts loved it. Churn was low. My profit margins weren't insane, maybe 40% after shipping and supplies, but the volume kept climbing. One random Tuesday, I got an email from someone at StockX. They were looking for boutique partners to help clean and prep used inventory. I almost thought it was spam. I got on a Zoom call and within 2 weeks, we had a trial contract. That alone added $12,000 per month in bulk orders. By 2022, I had 5 employees, our own warehouse, a mobile app, and a partnership with a sneaker resale marketplace. I flew to sneaker cons, got interviewed on a podcast, and even started selling branded cleaning kits, which now account for 20% of our revenue. This year we'll clear around $1.2 million in sales. I pay myself $120,000, take a quarterly distribution, and still get giddy when someone sends me a pic of their restored kicks with a "you saved them" message. I've made so many mistakes. I once shipped 30 pairs of sneakers to the wrong address. I spent $8,000 on a branding agency that gave me a PowerPoint and a pastel logo. I got scammed by a fake Instagram influencer who wanted $2,000 for exposure. But I learned fast. I moved faster. And most importantly, I kept asking myself, what would impress the 2019 me who just wanted to make up for a dog pee incident? So no, I didn't invent the next Uber. I didn't raise VC money. I didn't even mean to start a business. But I built something people actually want, in a niche I genuinely care about. And I did it one pair of dirty sneakers at a time. Max still pees on things occasionally. But now, it's just part of the origin story. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.